Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll get started here. Thank you so much all for joining us on this Thursday, or Friday Eve is what I like to say sometimes too, to prep us for Friday. We're happy to have you join us here on your lunch hour. Thank you so much for spending your time. I'm here. I'm going to introduce Seitu. He is a federal grants management consultant, instructor, and curriculum developer. He brings deep experience in federal grants administration, procurement, program oversight, and internal controls. Throughout his career, he has worked with federal agencies, state and territorial governments, and nonprofit organizations to help them strengthen how they manage and oversee federal funding. Seitu has designed and delivered numerous professional development courses on key grant topics, including the uniform administrative requirements under the 2 CFR 200, financial management of federal awards, subrecipient monitoring, procurement under federal grants, and audit preparation. His teaching focuses on practical application, helping professionals understand not just what the regulations say, but how to apply them in the real world programs and oversight environments. In addition to his work, Seitu has served in leadership roles with several community and nonprofit organizations, supporting initiatives in education, community development, and public service. He has also currently developed a comprehensive grants management certificate track designed to help agencies pass through entities and build stronger capabilities across full federal grant life cycle. We're excited to have him here with us today to walk through the federal grants management landscape. Seitu, thank you so much for joining us. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you. Thank
You
you.
bet.
Well, as Amanda said, my name is Seitu Stevens, and we're going to go over today some issues that have recently popped up in 2 CFR 200. I believe we're all in here because we're grant management professionals. We're either recipient of federal funds or we're a monitor of federal funds on the federal or state level. And I hope my little 45-minute rant here is worth your time today. Specifically, I'm coming from a place of 10 years of leadership on both sides of the federal coin. So I hope that serves some relevancy. I am currently chair of Chester County's Community Block Grant Administrative Board. And in that position, during pre-award, I oversee our pre-award selection process for our subrecipients. And we have 42 subrecipients working in the fields of social services, um, particularly in senior service transportation, veteran affairs, homelessness prevention, suicide prevention, some K to 12 workforce development projects as well. In Chester County, we outsource everything. So the sliver of the pot that I oversee covers those social services and a couple of more. Um, that's pre-award. And then in post-award, me and my team, we oversee the um, the fiscal and the programmatic evaluations on a quarterly basis of those subrecipients. And I've been doing that for about 11 years, clean audits, knocking on wood. So hopefully I'll be able to share some insights with you, but not so clean audits for my subrecipients. So that's something we can discuss as well. And on the other side of the federal coin, I sit on multiple boards, one being a charter school, Imhotep Charter High School in Philadelphia. In this position, I serve as vice president of the board and the chair of our subcommittee on grants and special education. We started off this year with about 3.7 more dollars 3.7 million more dollars in federal grant funding. So we're very aggressive in that area. So with leadership plus 10 years on both sides of the federal coin, um, I I hope that this 45 minutes once again is relevant. Hopefully we'll have time for you to ask questions. But today we're going to talk about something many organizations struggle with, understanding the full federal grants management landscape. Okay. Specifically, how organizations move from fragmented compliance to disciplined, a good, clean running machine, which is all what we want. You sometimes don't start off that way, but you can get that way. When I started off in leadership at the charter school that I served on the board for, they was about to close the school down. That's how bad things were in terms of compliance all over the place. And now we're in a space with constant and consistent leadership For the last 8 years, we had clean audits. Okay. And if you're not a recipient, if you're a monitor of receivers of grants and you really want the best for them, you really want them to turn things around. You really want to reduce their administrative burden. You want to reduce your administrative burden. This certificate is for you. And this seminar is going to focus on that. How do we turn those around? Case in point, if you have any questions for me, as noted in the chat, you can send them, and we will fill those questions in the question period of the seminar. Unless they're juicy and got some drama. Amanda and Shiga, you see some questions that are juicy, you can interrupt. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's talk about why this conversation matters. So, federal grants are one of the primary mechanisms through which national priorities are implemented. Billions upon billions upon dollars. All right. And they're flowing through multiple sources. Some of you are calling from federal agencies. Some of you are receivers of grants. You're calling from a state office or Indian tribal governmental office. Some of you are in local governments, cities, townships, universities, institutions of higher education, nonprofits, and community profit or community-based organizations. All right, so we're coming from a very disparate population. And the dollars that are moving from the federal agencies to the receivers, there's an attachment to public trust. In a sense, in the age of transparency, we want to make sure that if we're receiving these grant funds, we're definitely effective stewards. But if we're monitoring these recipients, that they are effective stewards of these grant funds. And despite all our best efforts and importance of this funding, our oversight reviews continue to show persistent weakness across the entire grant landscape and how grants are managed. So even though you're all dealing with doing different things, there's a current underlying flow or theme of best practices for grant management. So we're going to take a peek at it a little bit today, and then we're going to talk about how we really explore it and open it all up in our certification program. These common themes, common best practices. Doesn't matter if you're DOE, HUD, um, some people shouted out their agencies. USDA is here. The VA is here. OIG is in the house. FEMA. Still common themes. So, different recipients, various, but the same common themes. So the question begets us, why do these problems continue to occur? All right, let's talk about it. But before we talk about it, we have some interactive polls for you. Our first poll question of the day. I'm both newsy and I am nosy. I am both of those folks. I got a lot of poll questions for you. Our first one of the day. How would you describe your current role in federal grants lifecycle? What do they do? What do you do? All right. We got about 60. Let's see if we can get 100 folks participating. Got a lot of federal agency staff. A lot of folks are in compliance, audit, or financial oversight roles. One thing I like to note about our certification process, um, it is a lot of our courses, especially our electives, are to help you prepare and monitor grants from an auditor's mindset. Auditing prep is embedded into the curriculum. Absolutely. Not that many pass-through entities? You got one? Recipient or recipient management? Okay. We got two executive leaders here. All right, this is a great mix. This is a great mix. We have federal agency staff responsible for awarding or overseeing grant funds. You can be on the programmatic or the fiscal administrative side of that. And we have folks in the fiscal oversight role completely in terms of compliance. Compliance is a big issue, and our certification tracks are very much compliance centered for everyone, for recipients and for federal agencies, the sub-recipients as well. Thank you so much, Shige, giving us insight on those results. Right. So let's talk about the reality of grants oversight. All coming from different places, but once again, we're all dealing with the same compliance issues. So what's up with that? When oversight bodies review federal grant programs, they tend to identify these same issues. Weak internal controls. We have the Green Book. We have engagements that we can engage in, best practices, but we're still seeing the same weak internal controls. We're seeing the same findings. Inadequate documentation. Auditors talk about this a lot. They pull a procurement file, ship it and say, hey, I gave you the receipt. What else do you want? The documentation is not adequate or contemporaneous. Reoccurring, a common theme. Poorly defined program structures on multiple levels, on the federal agency level. And when it gets down to the pass-through entity, and you allow them some wiggle room to adjust the scope, sometimes objectives don't no longer align. Program auditors talk about this all the time. On the sub level, on the sub recipient level, objectives stray. Folks mix outcomes and outputs. Common themes, no matter what industry of grant management you're in. Weak risk assessment. Sometimes just only doing a pre-award risk assessment and not following up and embedding risk assessment policies and procedures in your post-award monitoring. So little things slip through the cracks. They start to snowball. Now you have a full-blown crisis on your hand. Costs are unallowable. People are upset. Congress people, state electives, they want answers because we weren't able to prevent or detect risk when we should have. Insufficient subrecipient oversight. Now, federal agencies, there's you have no privity with the subrecipient. The only connection is the federal agency with the pass-through entity and the pass-through entity with the subrecipient. But that doesn't make you sleep good at night, does it, my federal employees? Because you still want to make sure those subrecipients are effective stewards of federal funding. Common mistake keeps coming up and unallowable costs and activities, right? So, what's important to understand is that most of these problems don't originate in an audit. They don't instantly materialize when you are reviewing a programmatic or a fiscal report. Those reports and those audits are simply is when the problem is discovered. The real root cause usually emerges much earlier in the life cycle of the grant, often during program design for federal agencies, award structure or award negotiation, or the early implementation of the award. That's where things actually go wrong. So let's talk about where things break down in the across the grant life cycle. On the federal level, it can start off with program design. If federal personnel in their interpretation of Congress's appropriation authorization legislation that creates and funds the actual grant program, if their interpretation is incorrect, this can make things go off course very fast and initially. And in our grant certification program, we have a federal employee track that is specifically designed for federal employees, personnel who have to create grant programs, who have to interpret appropriation and authorization legislation. We have a course specifically designed for program design for you. And a pre-award risk assessment. Uh, Big major changes and 2 CFR 200, as you know, was recently revised in 2024. And one key point of emphasis that we find OMB revised in pre-award and post-award is this focus on cybersecurity assessments. So once again, in our certification program, especially for our federal personnel, we have a pre-award risk assessment course to show you what are the best practices in designing strong pre-award risk assessments, getting your stakeholder team together, creating strong criteria. So after your application process, you can sleep better at night, knowing you picked the winners. You picked the ones best suited. And if they're not best suited, you're confident that you can catch risk early, mitigate those risks, and address them so you can build up even capacity building recipients of grant funds. Award structuring, how you negotiate award, how you even identify award. Should you issue a subaward or should you issue a contract? Once again, an initial decision in the grant making process that if things fall off stray, like selecting the incorrect instrument, it can snowball. Financial administration. Is our pre-award risk assessment doing a good job of making sure that our recipients and our subrecipients for those pass-through entities out there have the basic management business operating systems needed for one, to process the grant, and for two, which is very important, in case a single or program auditor requests documents, the business management system can actually produce them. And subrecipient monitoring. My federal personnel, we're not monitoring the subrecipient. We are monitoring the pass-through entity's ability to monitor the subrecipient. We talk about that extensively in our federal personnel track and on our recipient side track of our certification program. We have a special course just designed pass-through entities to make your headache go away when dealing with subrecipient monitoring. I know you're tired of all the aspirin you're taking. Enroll in our course. We'll help you with that. You might still need some aspirin though. Performance oversight. How we monitor how effective it is how effective we actually establish those performance objectives. Are they aligned with the goals of the federal award? And is that federal award aligned with the strategic goals and objectives of the federal agency? Everything has to be aligned. And when you're not aligned, costs and activities that stand out as anomalies are easily spotted by auditors and sometimes flagged for findings. And that audit response, once again, how do we react to it? Or are we going to respond to it? Are we just going to react, shut things down, feel the shame, blame the fingers? Point the fingers, pointing at all of you? Or are we going to respond to it? Are we going to look at it as a moment for growth, right? And come out of a corrective action plan stronger and in a more effective steward of federal funds? All right. So we have our second poll question up here. Where do you believe in the risk emerges? Which one do you believe it emerges in? Where do you believe it emerges in? Let's see what we have here. Got a lot of folks in here today. Thank you for joining us. 104 is a great number for a Thursday afternoon. Oh, that's good. We're all over the place, which is really nice. Those of you picking program design and funding announcements, once again, on both sides of our certification track, we have a course specifically focused on program design. We have multiple courses focusing on pre-award risk assessment and award structuring, both for the pass-through entity and for the federal personnel. When it comes to financial management and cost of liability, we have fiscal administrative courses. and both sides. And we have a specific course for pass-through entities when it comes to monitoring and managing sub-recipients. And no one said audit response. Oh, so you're listening. All right. This is a smart group here. They realize that that's a response. That's a reaction to something that's happening. Thank you for that. She, our producer. All right. Let's move on. So, what's the deal with traditional training? We know these things keep occurring. These issues, they keep occurring, and we go to trainings and these issues keep occurring. Does that mean that perhaps there's something wrong with the training? And that's what graduate school has looked at. One of the reasons these issues persist is because traditional grant training is often fragmented. It's not telling a whole story. Most training programs focus on isolated compliance topics that don't intersect or interact with each other. For example, there may be a course on procurement, another one on cost principles, another one on monitoring, another one on audit preparation, and each one is its own little fiefdom, its own little siloed course. But when they are taught in isolation, you just learn individual rules without the collective cohesiveness of how all of these topics integrate with each other. And the result is fragmentation. You're getting the knowledge, but it's just fragmented. It's fragmented across your colleagues, it's fragmented in your mind. And the way we designed our course certification here is that we have a core set of courses that has a common theme. So when you emerge from these core courses, you're thinking in a mindset of being audit defensible, being ready for an audit. Any type of audit will do. It can be OIG audit, a GA audit. It can be an audit that a federal agency imposes on you. It can be the Subpart F single audit or the program audit. It can be a state program audit. It can be a compliance audit. It can be a property maintenance audit, but you're going to come out of our core courses with that mindset of audit defensibility. And then from that, we can add on more sophisticated courses, depending on if you want to do a federal personnel track or if you want to do a recipient track that builds on those necessary but often fragmented um, higher learning level courses. Okay. So, if you do not mind, I want to ask you a couple of more questions. I got another slide for you here. Poll question 3. How confident is your organization's current grants management structure in withstanding an external audit or oversight review? Once again, our core courses, the theme is to change your mindset, to get you audit ready. Because the proof is in the pudding, right? You think you're hitting your metrics? You think your recipients hitting their metrics, your sub-recipients hitting their metrics, reports on time, and boom, a program audit comes. A single audit comes, an OIG audit comes, a GAO audit comes, and you don't want to react. You want to respond. That's what our certification course is designed to help you do. We're at 60%. Let's see if we can get to 90%. I know it's lunchtime. I know you're eating too. Are you eating anything good? Put in the chat if you're eating something good. All right. Only 14% of us confident. Some of us are moderately confident, okay? Somewhat confident but needs improvements. Not very confident and unsure. All right. Okay. I see a little bell curve there. We designed, of course, the certification process. Now you and your colleagues take it. We're confident that you'll come out confident, that you're ready to defend the decisions you have made in an audit. And if you can do that, if you can produce documentation that is audit defensible, you're ahead of the game in grant management. Thank you for those polling results there. That's good to know. All right, so let's talk about what the real need is when it comes to grant management. So, what organizations truly need is not simply more compliance training, right? You need structure capacity development training. You need theme training. You need a training that if you and your colleagues go through, even if you take different electives in our certification track, you're coming out with the same mindset. That's structured capacity and capability development. Staff need to understand how the entire grant lifecycle operates. You need to know what your colleagues do. If you're a grant management specialist, a grant officer, you need to know as thoroughly as your colleagues on the other side who may be technical experts. You need to know what goes on with program execution and vice versa. If you're a subject matter expert, you're a project coordinator, a program manager, you need to know what's going on the other side with your colleagues when it comes to fiscal and administrative managing of the grant. Our certification process fills in those critical professional skill sets, foundational skill sets that you don't see. It fills that in, undercurrent theme of audit defensibility. You need to understand how oversight decisions are evaluated by auditors, inspector generals, or federal agencies, anyone that has authority to investigate your grant, to ask you for documentation. Let's get in that mindset. And most importantly, need to know how to make defensible decisions. So when you are requested from an investigative authority to deliver documents to justify your decisions, your approvals, your prior approvals, your spending decisions, whatever it is, you're confident. You're confident because you are managing grant in an audit defensible mindset now. And you're showing that either you are effective steward of federal funding or you're picking winners who are effective stewards of federal funding. I got another slide for you. I told you I'm newsy and I am nosy. I'm both of those things. So riddle me this. Which area of grant management do you think requires the most professional development within your organization? You can tell on yourself. What stays in Zoom? What is chatted in Zoom stays in Zoom? Yeah, 50%. Let's say we can get to 90% there. Oh, look at this. It's almost adequate equal across the board. Okay. It's very interesting. Understanding federal requirements and regulations. Of course, that's embedded in every course we teach here, and they change. They change a lot. Most of you know the recent revisions we had into CFR 200 that went into effect in 2024, that many federal agencies and recipients are still processing. Risk assessment and internal controls. We're always dealing with this. Single audits, program audits, sometimes even targeted desk reviews. We have a class specifically on internal controls as a core class in our certification program. Financial management and cost allowability, very important in all areas of the life cycle. In pre-award, we have classes on both sides. For those who are grantors, we have classes that teach you how to go through strong pre-award risk assessments, how to really do a thorough job when it comes to analyzing proposed budgets. And on the other side, those of you receiving funds and pre-award, we have classes of how you create a winning budget, how you create a budget aligned to what and speaks to what actually the federal agency wants you to accomplish. And then in post award, when it comes to financial management and cost allowability. We have classes that satisfy those core foundational professional skill sets that grant officers, grant managers, accountants, business professionals need. Once again, that drill home, let's think like an auditor here. Let's think objectively. Let's metacognate here. Let's think outside our body. If an auditor was reviewing what we were doing, what would they say? And when it comes to subrecipient monitoring oversight, 25% of you, that is where you need development at. Absolutely. We have classes on both sides. We have classes for federal agencies when it comes to monitoring pass-through entities and their abilities. And we have classes designed for pass-through entities for your best practices for monitoring those subrecipients. Chester County here, we deal with 42 subrecipients. That's a lot of subrecipients. Some of you may be dealing with dozens. Some of you just may be dealing with a handful, but they are giving you a headache. We break that down. And don't worry about audit prep and documentation, because as I said, that's embedded in every course, that defensibility mindset. Excellent. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. All right, let's move ahead now. So, one more poll question for you. What's your current training approach? What's your current training approach? Okay. Former structure programs, occasional workshops or webinars. Got it. On the job training. A lot of you, it's baptism by fire. Oh, okay. It's good to know. Well, let me introduce you to our grant management certification track. A little bit more finer, if I can. The program is designed to build a comprehensive capability in federal grants management. We have some core classes that are themed. Why are they themed? Because past experience shows that just taking certification classes fragmented, sometimes weeks apart from each other, months apart from each other. Knowledge is lost and professional skill sets are not interrelated. So the theme of our core is audit defensibility. Doesn't matter if you take our classes weeks apart, days apart, you're going to come out of our core with an audit defensibility or audit defense mindset. And that's going to enhance your learning experience for our intermediate and advanced courses, which are focused on either the federal personnel experience or the recipient experience. So instead of focusing on isolated compliance topics, the program integrates the several critical areas: federal regulatory requirements, 2 CFR 200, all of its all of its dependencies, FAR 31.2, and its interrelatedness with issuing procurements from grants, understanding the tools of grant management when it comes to investigatory oversight, the Yellow Book, the Green Book, the Compliance Supplement, operational decision making. How are you making your decisions? If an auditor looks back at your executive decision or your programmatic decision making, can they see the mindset you use? Can they determine that your procurement selection was of a mindset of a prudent person? Can they determine that your applicant selection wasn't arbitrary and it was based on some type of merit-based methodology? Can they determine when you decided to grant prior approval for a cost that you had a structured communication with all of your colleagues before you made that decision? In real world grants administration, all of our courses are backed up with real world case scenarios to help you understand how the entire system works. All right. So, what makes our program different? The certification track focuses on life cycle understanding. We go over the entire life cycle, and we not only go over the entire life cycle, we break it down into many components. We go over the pre-award, and then in the pre-award, we go over core foundational components of Subpart C and 2 CFR 200. We break separately in the pre-award phase the awarding and structuring of grant awards, which is its own separate course that we have. So we don't teach a pre-award class. This is all Subpart C. No, no, because awarding and negotiating a grant is itself a professional skill set that needs to be focused on. And then in post-award, we break down multiple components of the post-award process. Classes for best practices for monitoring. A class specifically for best practices for monitoring pass-through entities. A class specifically for monitoring sub-recipients. A class specifically that goes over best practices outside of required performance and fiscal reports. Best practices for desk reviews, site visits. And then closeout. We don't just think of it as, oh, okay, this is the end of subpart D of 2 CFR 200. Let's just include it in our post-award process. No, we break down classes specifically for best practices for closeout, making sure we can close these grants out for 1 year. The entire grant lifecycle in our certification track is honed in on, not only in just pre-award, post-award, and closeout, but within those three stages, specific classes for specific professional attributes. And risk-based decision making. We have courses that are specifically designed for those professionals that have to do certain specific tasks. Maybe you have to create a pre-award risk assessment. Maybe you have to evaluate applications. Maybe your job is to create a risk mitigation framework. We have classes specifically designed for you. And documentation and defensibility, interweaving and integrated in our core class structure. And when it comes to operational execution, we have tons of case studies based on real world examples for you to flesh out if you're taking an online class of a group, or for you to reflect on in our self-paced courses as well. You're not simply learning 2 CFR 200 subsections, okay? You're learning how to grant management actually works and how it is integrated. All right. So a certification track is organized into three tiers. Those core foundational courses I've discussed earlier. And then the immediate operational courses and advanced strategic courses. So we start off with the core foundation. And then after the core foundation, you see there are courses designed intermediate and advanced for either the personnel mindset of federal personnel or that of a recipient. And some of these courses are interchangeable too. We have a handful that both the recipient and the personnel can take. But it all starts with that core foundation. Leah says you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar there were issues of 2 CFR 200, but I don't think you explained what those issues are. Let me clarify that. The issues were that we train in 2 CFR 200, but we keep seeing the same compliance issues, meaning that Leah should express that better. The main issue is we keep seeing the same compliance issues under 2 CFR 200. And the way we solve that here at the graduate school is a core foundation set of courses that doesn't fragment the information, but interrelates it and connects it through the theme of being ready to defend yourself in an audit, to have an audit defensible mindset. Thank you for that comment, Leah. So you can progress through the program as your responsibilities expand. Many of you are new to federal grant management. And it builds upon that. You're welcome, Leah. It builds upon that from the core foundation certification. When you get through that, you're going to be ready for it. You're going to be ready for any type of audit. And when you're ready for the audit, when you're ready to defend the actions you've made, whether you're a recipient or whether you're a federal grant personnel, then you're there. You're where you need to be as an effective grant manager. All right. So, our core foundational courses. We have an introduction to grants and cooperative agreements class. And in this class, we don't try to force feed you to CFR 200. That's a separate class. We don't want to overwhelm you. Of course, we want to talk about TCFR 200, but in this course, we're going to talk about the life cycle of the grant and best practices, both for federal personnel and recipients when it comes to managing a grant or a cooperative agreement. Then let's talk about the uniform administrative requirements. We've introduced you to them in the Introduction to Grants and Cooperative Agreements course. But in this course, this is where we take an expansive dive into subparts A through D. We go over the definitions, the purpose, the pre-award requirements, and the post-award requirements. And we separate subparts E and F, cost principles and audit, because once again, we don't want to overwhelm you. Okay. Financial administration of federal grants. This is a core class that those of you on the project management side, project leaders, my biologists, my archaeologists, my social workers, my project coordinators, you're not going to be intimidated. Okay. This is a course designed for everyone, not just federal fiscal administrative personnel. Everyone can take our financial administrative of federal grants course. It's a foundational course for those of you who are fiscal administrators. It's a strong foundation for you. Maybe a revisiting of some new revised GAP and GAGAS policies. But those of you who are unfamiliar, it's going to give you a strong foundation moving forward, knowing what your colleagues do and knowing how you can help them. And managing and monitoring subawards, or are managing and monitoring um, first tier recipients, depending if you are on a federal personnel track or if you are on the recipient track. Best practices and monitoring. Monitoring begins post award. So this class picks up in subpart D of 2 CFR 200, and we extract best practices. And this class is also case-based scenario heavy, so you can see real world examples. These courses establish the operational foundation of grants management. And then we have intermediate courses. Now that we've went through the core courses and we build up your knowledge and foundation, we go into courses where you need specific professional skill sets upgraded. Program design and risk assessment. Many of you federal personnel, someone may have just sent you an email saying, hey, this new grant program starting, we're putting you on it. Soon as Congress passes appropriations and authorization legislation, it's yours. Let's get cracking. Let's start developing your programs, guidelines, and regulations. Never done it before? Our program risk and design assessment course, it's got you covered. Pre-award risk assessment and award structuring. Those of you who have to negotiate grants, those of you responsible for conducting a pre-award risk assessment, whether you're on the federal level or you're a pass-through entity, this course is for you with in mind the newly revised revisions in 2 CFR 200 when it comes to pre-award risk assessment. That focus they want you to have on cybersecurity and protecting PII and negotiating awards terms and special conditions. Once again, we just don't have a basic pre-award class. We break down certain functions. In this case, this focuses if you are in charge of negotiating special terms and conditions in a proposed budget, you send in a proposed budget, they chopped it up. You need to go back and forth. You need to revise scope. You need to revise activities. You need to revise fundings. You need to revise what you proposed for a cost share. All of those tricky, specific pre-award professional skill sets are explored in developing negotiating indirect cost rates and negotiating award terms and special conditions. All pre-award courses, but yet, once again, you went to our core, so now we can get in the nitty-gritty with the specifics. And then we have more advanced courses. Monitoring performance and compliance oversight, audit preparation and audit response, fraud risk identification and prevention. Fraud risk identification and prevention is built so you can come out of it as OIG's biggest cheerleader. I know we have some OIG people in our course, and I know they're probably happy to hear that, but it is. All of our monitoring is based on identifying fraud, waste, and abuse. And we take a deep dive into that. Documentation and defensible decision making. This is a course that's designed for both federal personnel and recipients. If OIG questions you, if GAO questions you, if a federal agency questions you, if a state agency questions you, why did you make this decision? Why did you approve this cost? Why did you approve this activity? Why did you select this applicant? You're able to defend your decisions. We show you a logical and methodological way first to make that decision so it's easy to defend. All right. So it all boils down to a real world training approach. In all of our courses, we use program design exercises, pre-award risk assessment exercises, subrecipient and recipient monitoring simulations, audit finding simulations, corrective action planning exercises, general terms matching, fill in a passage, you name it. We don't just keep giving you the same type of exercise over and over again. It's a variety, and it's meant for you to practice real world decision making. And of course, our curriculum is aligned with 2 CFR 200, the Green Book, the federal audit expectations, and risk-based oversight practices, the best used by federal agencies. I talk too much, folks. I need to get to this poll question. Help me out here. So, if a structured grants management certification program were available for your staff, how valuable would it be for your organization? All right. We actually see the value in it. That's good to hear. That's really, really good to see. Absolutely. So, kind of reflecting your poll questions. It matters because at the end of our certification, you will reduce audit findings. Okay? Well, I guess I can't um, promise that, but you will. Okay? You will protect federal funds. You know, we're going to have an optimistic mindset. You're going to improve performance, maintain, or sometimes reestablish public trust, and ultimately deliver mission outcomes. Achieve your federal awards objectives. That's what it's all about at the end. So, effective grant management doesn't happen by accident. It needs to be structured, need to be disciplined, have a risk awareness mindset, documentation, and professional development. And here at the graduate school, we aim to help you deliver on all five of those through a structured, interrelated grant certification process. So, thank you so much for your rapt attention. And I believe, Amanda, we have some questions or some follow-up. Your microphone is muted, Amanda.
Oh, thank you, my friend. There is a handout that we'll be providing as well. So I'm going to put that in the channel for everyone to utilize if they need to. What did I just? That was my mistake. Did I just randomly do that? There we go.
All right.
Open here. Okay, so it's in the channel chat for you guys to reference that if you need to or would like to. Then
And
I
that's
didn't
a
know, Situ, did you get any questions on your end while you were speaking that you'd like to answer right now as well?
well, that's our gift to you from our colleagues here in the graduate school. What we noticed are some 10 grant management areas that are easy to spot. These topics are covered and are throughout our course curriculum as well. And let's see, do we have any questions? Or are there any questions we can field at this time? Feel free if you want to wish you could put them in a chat. Okay. So we're seeing some questions are being generated. See our chat. Or perhaps you can raise your hand to be acknowledged if you wish to ask a question. As questions are being generated, Amanda, how would they learn more about our certification course? How would they follow up with it?
They can absolutely go online at graduateschool.edu. We also have a seminars page as well. We added it to the main area of our homepage. So you can actually see that in the drop-down menu under webinars. That's another area where you'll see courses from what Setu had spoke on this morning as well, or this afternoon. So those are really great areas to take a look at if you're curious in what we offer here at graduate school.
Excellent, excellent. Let's see if we have any questions in our chat. Let's see. Okay. Right. Some are being generated. Here we
Oh,
go.
I
Go.
have one.
Okay.
Here we go. Let me send this over to you.
Mhm. All right. We have a question here.
Yep. Why
Why
do
do
early life cycle decisions? Yep, that was the one I was looking at. Did you see that on your NC too?
Yes, I did. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
Because they can snowball. They can snowball. That's why we have so many pre-award specific questions for recipients and for federal personnel. Because usually if we can um if we can accurately and efficiently identify and define risk for applicants. If we can create program design for grants initially that don't confuse our future recipients. If we can negotiate fair terms and negotiate reasonable, specific conditions that don't exhaust our recipients. These are usually findings in postal board because they start snowballing. So we really focus on, okay, let's break the pre-award cycle down into key professional duties that folks have to do to make sure we're mitigating risks early so they won't become nasty gremlins in post award. That's a great question.
I have another one here as well. Why is risk-based decision making becoming more important in grants management?
Oh, that's a good one. The simple question is because that's what Congress is demanding. Congress is really demanding that. And every revision we have of 2 CFR 200 goes more into more how well are federal agencies managing and mitigating risk. They want to see stronger risk frameworks. They want to see greater and more criteria when it comes to identifying risk. Case in point, that OMB is really reinforcing and is going to probably continue reinforcing to who knows when, is the advent of cybersecurity and protecting those assets. Yeah, that's what Congress wants. And ultimately, Congress approves and appropriates the funding. So we have to do what they want. And that is absolutely where their mindset is. Earlier on in the 2000s, Congress mindset was all in transparency. That's why we have 1,000,001 federal reporting websites. Now, their mindset, they're all on cybersecurity and risk assessments. Good
That's
question.
great. Thank you. I believe we might have time for one more. We've got about 3 minutes. What do you say?
One more question. I won't talk that long.
Okay. Can you describe some of the practical exercises participants complete during the certificate program, the certification program?
Yeah, we don't bore you with the same type of exercise over and over again. It's varied. We have case study scenarios. We have some early foundational key term matching definitions and scenarios. We actually, in some of our financial management classes, especially intermediate and advanced, we walk you step by step where you will perform a single audit in phases. We have scenarios where you have to spot red flags and identify critical issues. So it's varied. We're not trying to bore you. It's varied. Yeah.
That's good info. Thank you.
Mhm.
I believe that's all we have based on time, but was there anything else, say too, that you wanted to speak to with our audience here before we head out for the afternoon?
Absolutely. Our colleagues here are excited to see you in our certification courses, whether it's self-paced or live online. We've got you covered. We got you covered.
Absolutely. And thank you so much all for joining us today. We appreciate it. If you're curious about more webinars that we have at graduate school outside of the grants process, we also have a bunch on AI coming up. So take a look at graduateschool.edu/seminars, and that's where you'll also find more. And if you haven't signed up yet, or if you're also been in one of our webinars before, we're happy to see you again in the future. And thank you for joining us today. It was great to
Thank
see
you
you
all
all.
for your time.
Thank you.